Still exists a general state of either denial, complacency, or even apathy about both the reality and the potential effects of Y2K.
This is the biggest crisis in the history of this country.
Climate change is literally an existential threat to our nation and to the world.
This virus will continue to evolve and threaten our health system.
𝗁𝗏 refers to the action of persuading someone or a group of people by deception, but in this case, the nations of the world have been deceived. The world as we know it has been deceived at different points in history for selfish gain. Through the decades, each sinister scheme has come dressed in different names. Ultimately, these detestable stratagems have been known to achieve three things: deceive, defraud, and dominate the nations. But unknown to the nations time and again, they have blindly bowed in submission to the deception of the day.
There are those who think, how can the whole world be deceived? I reminded you of Y2K. If you don't know what Y2K is, maybe you're too young. But everybody who's old enough would know what happened with Y2K. All the governments of the nations were in preparation for Y2K, spending billions of dollars. And through their several ministries of information, the propaganda was on every day, on radio, on television, large billboards announcing to us to prepare for Y2K. Every day it was about the Y2K. There was fear on what was going to happen.
By the end of the 90s, many of us were happy slaves to our computers. But our new masters had a trick they'd forgotten to tell us about.
People were terrified the world was going to end.
This is not one of the summer movies where you can close your eyes during the scary parts.
With nearly everything in our economy run by computers, the prospect of a digital meltdown is too huge to contemplate.
I was worried because the whole computer game was new to us, and I was a little ignorant.
We didn't know what we didn't know.
And many thought what we didn't know was going to hurt us.
There was a fear. Everything's in the internet, everything's in computers, and we're gonna lose it all.
And every day the analysts will be on TV telling us of all the catastrophic things that could happen. Couldn't rest. On radio it was there every day, on TV it was there every day, bombarding everywhere and telling us that if we don't get our computers compliant now, there's going to be a crash, planes are going to just fall out of the air, you know, and things are just going to crash, things are going to happen, lifts will suddenly stop working, you know, everything, the society will come to a standstill, and people were afraid. How that millions will die in hospitals because the systems will suddenly shut.
At the stroke of midnight, January 1st, 2000, elevators may stop. Heat may vanish. Credit cards and ATMs may cease to function. Airplanes and trains may come to a halt.
You wouldn't want to be in an airplane, you wouldn't want to be in an elevator, and you wouldn't want to be in a hospital.
The life of this baby depends on computer chips. They are embedded in the machines that monitor his heart rate. And the question is, will they work on January 1st, 2000?
No one was telling the truth that it was a very simple thing that needed to be done. A very simple adjustment. It had to do with the dates.
The basic idea on Y2K was that for convenience, all these computer programs, when it came to do dates, you only needed 2 numbers. Why use 4 numbers when you only need 2? And then they recognized, what date is a computer going to think it is when we get to 2000?
One simple date change for man, one major screw-up for computer.
I said to those in my office, I said, nothing will happen, it's a lie. I said, I'm going to be in the office waiting for it to happen. I said, nothing's going to happen, nothing. And you know what? Nothing happened.
On New Year's Eve, 1999, when the ball dropped at midnight, pretty much nothing happened. The millennium arrived, people partied, and there was not a huge disaster. So what happened? Did hundreds of billions of dollars help us avoid Armageddon? Or maybe we got a little hysterical and just got the whole Y2K thing wrong.
There's a guy, I think it's John Koskinen, if I'm getting his first name right. Koskinen was appointed by Bill Clinton to head the project to get the government Y2K compliant.
By 1998, President Bill Clinton moved to quell the fears by creating a Council on Year 2000 Conversion. He put John Koskinen, a high-level government administrator, in charge.
The cry went up from the Hill that the administration was not paying enough attention, there was not a coordinated effort, and there needed to be somebody in control. I only halfway facetiously said the president gave me an office, an assistant, and said, don't let the world stop.
Guess what he said when he was done? That will tell you the purpose of the Y2K. He said, wow, I can run the whole world now with just 4 men. That was the plan all the time. The plan, the ultimate plan of Y2K was to get all computers synchronized. That was the plan. It's all part of the one world system that they were heading for all the time.
Still in pursuit of this evil agenda, another plot was unleashed on the world 20 years later, this time dressed up as a pandemic.
COVID-19, the disease that defined our lives in 2020.
2020 is now the deadliest year in U.S. history.
Down this road here, these are the 12 towns which are on lockdown. We've been told, actually, if we go over this line, we'll end up in quarantine ourselves.
All the shutdown, the lockdowns, which I told you were lockups, they locked the whole world down and locked all the people up. So streets locked down, people locked in. That's imprisonment, forced imprisonment. And they did it around the world. It turned out all the scientific data showed the lockdowns were wrong. But I told you then, they were not making a mistake. They knew they were wrong. And the results were the results they wanted. Shatter the economies, destroy the economies, and reset. I said, go and read Klaus Schwab's Fourth Industrial Revolution, The Great Reset. I said, go and read his own document. It's in his own book. They didn't make a mistake. It was the plan.
After COVID died, an age-old fraud was resurrected, rebranded and unleashed on the nations of the world, to yet again make corpses of their economies. This fraud is labeled climate change. One more time, do the nations realize they've been conned?
And everybody followed them blindly as they followed Y2K and as they followed COVID. And this time again, it's the same thing. And everyone is thinking that somehow, maybe there's something true about climate change. It's not true. It's a lie. It's founded on a lie. It's founded on a lie. They created the data. They're lying to you. They created the data. And this was based on recapturing the world. That's what it's about. It's not based on science.
Everywhere you are told that man-made climate change is proved beyond doubt. But you are being told lies.
I've often heard it said that there is a consensus of thousands of scientists on the global warming issue and that humans are causing a catastrophic change to the climate system. Well, I am one scientist, and there are many that simply think that is not true.
And the global warming alarm is dressed up as science, but it's not science. It's propaganda.
If the CO2 increases in the atmosphere as a greenhouse gas, then the temperature will go up. But the ice core record shows exactly the opposite. So the fundamental assumption, the most fundamental assumption of the whole theory of climate change due to humans is shown to be wrong.
We're just being told lies. That's what it comes down to. The whole thing stinks.
Terrible. Reminds me of Al Gore's inconvenient truths, just as I said, for more convenient things. He had told them that somehow in 7 years' time, the world was going to experience this terrible warming, all the kind of things that were going to happen. 7 years' time. This is 12 years since then. And nobody is calling our God to carpet. No one is questioning him.
The globalist carbon tax scam and mockingbird media panic of global warming has been drilled into gullible minds since Al Gore's massive exaggeration of a documentary titled An Inconvenient Truth, which hit theaters 12 years ago.
10 hottest years ever measured, they've all occurred in the last 14 years. And the hottest of all was 2005.
Since then, it has been largely debunked as pseudoscience.
They made Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth mandatory viewing at public schools. Everything he said in that movie turned out to be wrong, but it's not that it turned out to be wrong, it was all a lie. Al Gore's a liar, a con man.
And they gave him a Nobel Prize for lying. Terrible. It's sad that he has not been asked to return it. Because all those who are protecting him are involved in the same atrocities. There are many of you who are activists for climate change. You don't even know what they're talking about because you were lured into it. You're dealing with a cult here. You're dealing with a cult. There's nothing scientific in what they told you about climate change. It's a hoax. This was designed years ago as a sure measure for taking over the nations of the world. Make no mistakes about it. This is not some conspiracy theory.
I talked earlier about this network, and one of that network is called the Club of Rome, set up in 1968. People like Henry Kissinger, by the way, Henry Kissinger, massively part of this over the decades, is involved in all of them. And he's involved in the Club of Rome, and connects into the Rockefellers and all the people I've been talking about. And its job has been to manipulate the environmental movement. In 1991, its founder, the founder of the Club of Rome, 𝗍𝘁cie, was quoted as saying in a Club of Rome document, he said, "In searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine and the like would fit the bill." Here's another member of the Club of Rome. And that's why the official story for climate change, carbon emissions caused by humans, is as much a nonsense as the official story of 9/11. It is a problem, and the solution is international law, more and more taxation to save the planet, more and more imposition of the big brother state to save the planet.
As I've said again and again, climate change is a hoax. You're dealing with, from the United States alone, a $22 billion business. That's how big it is. That's why they don't want to stop it, even though they know the truth. The deception is there. And all about money and control.
I think the level of funding for climate and climate-related sciences was somewhere around the order of $170 million a year, which was reasonable for the size of the field. It jumped to $2 billion a year, more than a factor of 10.
The billions of dollars invested in climate science means there is a huge constituency of people dependent upon those dollars. And they will want to see that carry forward. It happens in any bureaucracy.
Anybody who stands up and says, hey, wait a minute, let's look at this coolly and rationally and carefully and see actually how much merit, how much this stands up, they will be ostracized.
And they've lied to a lot of young people who are thinking, they've put the fear in them and telling those young people that their future is bleak. And except something is done right now, they're not going to have a future. You're going to live in a very terrible world. And these young kids are in the classrooms and they're being deceived by these people. We need to look at what they are teaching them in the schools. They're lying to them in the schools.
We want our textbooks to reflect the facts. And at this point, climate change and its causes are proven scientific facts. So it makes perfect sense that we would make sure that only the facts are provided to our students.
What is happening with the environmental movement is they're putting children ahead of their parents. You know more than your parents. Your parents are stupid. Your grandparents and your parents have ruined the earth. So it's actually teaching children to be against their parents as well as our political system.
The only way they can keep this storyline alive, given that the facts are now entirely and implacably and inexorably and increasingly against them, is to insist that only the party line be taught in schools.
I don't see any reason to teach kids about this other than to, unless you're trying to, brainwash them in some way, do them when they're young kind of thing.
This is the day of the church, and while the church remains, deception will not thrive in our world, because we are proliferating the nations with the truth of God's eternal word that makes free. John 8 verse 32, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.